Last week on the show, we talked about the devastation Hurricane Maria caused in Puerto Rico and how it left most of the island without electricity and a substantial amount of residents without food or clean drinking water. Now, we're learning more about the situation from people on the ground, and we heard from Carmen Yulín Cruz, who's the mayor of San Juan, the largest city in Puerto Rico with 400,000 residents, and she explained just how bad the situation really is.
I am begging anyone that can hear us to save us from dying. If anybody out there is listening to us, we are dying, and you are killing us with the inefficiency and the bureaucracy. We will make it with or without you. Because what stands behind me is all due to the generosity of other people. Again, this is what we got last night: 4 pallets of water, 3 pallets of meals, and 12 pallets of infant food, which I gave them to Comerío, where people are drinking off a creek. So I am done being polite. I am done being politically correct. I am mad as hell. Because my people's lives are at stake.
So that's a really difficult video to get through because you can really see the pain in her eyes. And look, Carmen is someone who I think exemplifies true leadership because her assessment of the situation in Puerto Rico is not based on what her constituents call and tell her. I mean, she knows what's happening because she's literally waist deep in water trying to find people who were victimized by Hurricane Maria, and she's trying to help them. So she knows what's going on, and she states that the federal government's response to the hurricane has not been adequate. That's just a fact of the situation.
People have no food, no drinking water, no medical supplies, and people that are going to pick up the supplies from the different FEMA distribution centers are been told that there's none. Call on Monday and we'll see what we can do for you. This is how ridiculous this gets. FEMA is telling people that they have to register via internet or the phone. Well, hello, newsflash. We don't have internet, and most people don't have a phone connection. So it is amazing that we continue to use the same standard operating procedures that do not work in a situation like the one that we have. I am sure the president wants to help. Yesterday I got a call from Chief of Staff himself that asked what we needed, but still things didn't happen as fast as they should have happened. I had to give the rations that I got yesterday from FEMA, 3 or 4 pallets of water, 3 or 4 pallets of food, and 4 pallets of baby supplies to the town of Comerío because they had not received 1 bottle of water at the time. So the plans are in place, but the reality does not go and does not fit to the plans that you have. So you have to do like the Marines. You adapt, you improvise, you overcome.
So clearly, in being critical of the federal government's response to Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, she's not doing this for partisan reasons. I think her intentions are pretty clear. She's doing this to tell the federal government, as a matter of fact, that what they're doing is not adequate given the gravity of the situation, and that if they really want to help Puerto Ricans and stop more people from dying and save lives, then they have to do more. They have to offer more than what they've been offering. And the thing about these types of hurricanes is that even though you might instinctively think that things will gradually improve with each successive day, that hasn't actually been the case. And this is because most of the island is still left without any electricity. So as people continue using backup generators for power, well, demand for diesel fuel is beginning to increase, which is leading to shortages. And when you have hospitals relying on these backup generators to keep patients alive and they begin to run out of fuel, well, really bad things start to happen.
2 people died yesterday because there was no diesel in the place that they were at.
Where did this happen?
In San Juan.
But where was it?
Hospital.
They died in the hospital because there wasn't diesel?
There's no diesel, there's no life support system.
Now, unfortunately, that might only be a snapshot of what's to come, because out of Puerto Rico's 69 hospitals, only 11 have power. And according to a Reuters report, fuel is so precious that deliveries are made by armed guards to prevent looting. Medical staffers are also running low on gasoline for their daily commutes to work. Puerto Ricans are queuing as long as 7 hours at the island's few functioning filling stations. Fuel is just the beginning. Without air conditioning, the walls of the operating room were dripping with condensation and floors were slippery. And it's not just hospitals that are experiencing this right now, it's also retirement homes.
Today, Ms. Maddow, we visited 3 retirement homes. And as you walked in, people would jump and shout from their windows asking for help. These are people that have been left alone. They cannot walk. The elevator isn't working. The water isn't pumping because there's no energy. They cannot cook, so they have no water since yesterday.
So clearly people are suffering, and as a direct result of said suffering, people are starting to get desperate. And it's not just hospitals, it's not just retirement homes, because a FEMA report estimates that 44% of Puerto Rican residents do not have access to potable drinking water. That's nearly 1.5 million people. That is absolutely terrifying. So when you take into account the fact that more than 1 million U.S. citizens don't have access to clean drinking water, well, it's no wonder why Puerto Ricans feel abandoned. And when I talked to a friend from Puerto Rico, that's really the sense that I got, that Puerto Ricans are being left behind by the federal government, that they're second-class citizens. Because my friend Carlos told me that he feels like the government's response has been terrible. And he explains that most of the recovery effort up until this point has not been led by the federal government like you would expect. It's been led by people in the community and local leaders like Carmen Yulín Cruz. Now also, Carlos tells me just how insane it is to see malls and hotels with a steady supply of power and supplies, while hospitals are running low on literally everything. So that doesn't make any sense. And there's also been a lot of political ramifications that people aren't really talking about in the mainstream media. So for example, if you're a Puerto Rican, it might feel as though you're actually living in a police state because there are actual curfews being enforced. So the situation is incredibly it's honestly heartbreaking. And the criticism being directed at President Trump, well, it's warranted, because he knew ahead of time that Hurricane Maria was headed straight for Puerto Rico, and there were a number of things that he could have done before the hurricane hit that would have mitigated the disaster. Now, that's not to say that there aren't logistical issues that make Puerto Rico's situation more difficult to deal with than, say, Texas or Florida, but there are things the U.S. government could have done that it did not. Trump could have deployed a naval ship. He could have sent out supplies preemptively. He could have actually gone to Puerto Rico to see for himself just how bad the situation is after the hurricane occurred and not wait an entire week. And thankfully, Donald Trump has finally done some of these things. The USNS Comfort is actually being deployed to Puerto Rico, and he's now visiting Puerto Rico, but these are things that should have been done immediately after it occurred. And there's one more really important thing that needs to be done that has yet to be done. FEMA needs to authorize full disaster help. So, Vox reports, the Federal Emergency Management Agency has not authorized every disaster response tool it has at its disposal, including aid for more permanent repairs on the island's roads, bridges, water control facilities, public utilities, and government buildings. FEMA authorized this level of aid for Texas 10 days after Hurricane Harvey flooded the Houston area with 4.5 feet of rain. The government of Puerto Rico already asked for this kind of aid. Under FEMA rules, the governor of the affected state is supposed to put in a formal request for this kind of extra help. A spokesperson for FEMA in Puerto Rico told Vox that the Commonwealth just submitted paperwork Tuesday morning, but didn't say how soon the aid might be authorized. Now, I don't understand how the Republican Party, who always lambasts bureaucratic red tape, aren't expediting this particular process, because if there's any time to complain about the bureaucracy being extra slow and killing people, now's the time. But Republicans are silent, so more needs to be done. I understand that gradually the United States is starting to try and help, but they're not doing it fast enough, and as Mayor Carmen puts it,
we need to get our together here. And help needs to get into people's hands now. Not tomorrow, not later, now.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Now, if you would like to support this effort and help Puerto Ricans, I'll include a link to a direct relief page in the description box so you can donate to help the effort. And look, the road to recovery it's going to take years. And currently, though, Puerto Ricans are in life-saving mode, as Carmen Yulín Cruz put it. They're not thinking about recovery and rebuilding and whatnot. They're thinking about saving people's lives, because when there are people in the hospital whose lives literally depend on backup generators having enough diesel fuel to keep them alive, that's a number one priority. And look, the United States should be doing everything in its power to help them out. But the fact of the matter is their response to this hurricane has been tepid at best. And Donald Trump should absolutely be ashamed of himself for basically abandoning Puerto Ricans up until this point.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.